All right. Could you guys start by introducing yourselves?
Sure. I'm Sarah, and this is Bobby, and we are here to give a presentation. I feel like we're in a weird time loop situation. Maybe I've been watching too much Magicians. Not a thing. There's no such thing as too much Magicians. Anyway, I'm Sarah, and this is Bobby, and we're here to talk to you guys about cocktails, mocktails, and infusions. A cocktail, I think everybody knows, but it's a mixed drink using alcohol in one or more different kinds of mixers, or more than one kind of alcohol. Basically, it has more than one piece. Otherwise, you're just drinking alcohol. Bobby's going to define what a mocktail is.
Usually it's based on a standard cocktail like a virgin margarita, but it's a non-alcoholic cocktail. It's a way to kind of get those herbaceous flavors or those sweet flavors that you like, and be able to drink it without the alcohol and any of the negative effects of alcohol if you're concerned about those.
Yes. And then infusions are a way of making flavored alcohol. So we will talk through some of our favorite alcohol infusions and what those are.
Good. Dive on in.
Yeah, good. Ready to go?
Yep, fantastic. Can you tell us what you have there?
Oh, yeah. We'll tell you everything on our bar. We have it a lot on our bar. So we have an ice bucket. Ice is important for all things. We have a couple of different key elements to make infusions, and we'll talk through those as we go through. You always want to measure what you put into a drink.
Shaker?
Yeah, shakers, French press, coffee filter. All of these things are very important. And we'll explain why.
In case I got to cut Sarah over here.
Please don't. Violence is not allowed. It's Con after dark, but still no violence.
I can't promise anything.
I also did want to talk to you guys about some terminology that we may use. The first term is building versus shaking, and when you do each. So a build cocktail is something that you make in a glass, and sometimes you will pour it into a glass. Sometimes you'll make it in the glass you're serving it in. A shaken drink is something that you shake. It's pretty self-explanatory. But one key thing to remember versus when you shake versus when you build is anything that has juice in it, you probably want to shake. Anything that's got carbonation in it, you probably want to build. It's more complicated than that. An old fashioned, for example, has neither of those things, but you want to build it in the glass, and that's because of the kind of bitters you use. And there's, again, way more rules, and neither of us are professional bartenders, but we do have some experience with this, and we just want to talk through some things. Sorry. So the next thing I want to talk about is syrup. So we are going to be talking about, most of our drinks tonight use some form of simple syrup. Bobby's adjusting the camera. Some form of simple syrup. So we use a simple syrup is essentially a half sugar, half water mixture that's heated up until the sugar is completely dissolved. We have a couple of different simple syrups, and you can use simple syrup to create a lot of different things. So this is an orange flavored simple syrup. We added orange peel to the simple syrup when we made it, and that way you get like a lot of flavor in a cocktail without actually having to do anything to the alcohol itself. You just make a flavored syrup.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, and it's really easy to make at home because all you need is water, sugar, and an orange. And then this is just a straight up plain simple syrup. We also have a honey simple syrup, which is half honey to half water, again heated up until the honey completely dissolves. And the next thing I want to talk about is rules. And there are some some rules that can't be broken. Like, don't drink if you're underage. It's just a thing. No one is allowed to break that rule. Other rules can be bent. Other rules are really just up to you. So let's go ahead and move it forward. So important things to remember as we go through this, as we talk about some of the things. Again, if you're under 21, please don't drink. It's bad for you. It's illegal in the United States. Just don't do it. If you're over 21, don't serve alcohol to someone that's under 21. This is an 18 and plus panel, but we understand that people can join of all ages. And we want people to
mocktails. So
yeah, and we're doing mocktails. But don't drink if you're underage. It's not good for anyone. Another solid rule that I think everybody has broken at one point in time: just don't shake things that are carbonated.
What?
I've done that.
That makes no sense.
I know, right? You absolutely have to shake things that are carbonated. Yeah. Also, if it's carbonated and comes in a glass bottle, don't drop it. It's not a good idea.
Don't drop like a thing of maraschino cherries.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things you shouldn't drop.
A whole lot of sticky.
Anyway. And then the final thing I want just to remind people of is, as long as you like it, there's no right or wrong. If you like the thing you're drinking, there's nothing wrong with it. So
caveat, this one likes a lot of really nasty things. So when it comes to like flavors, so
that's not true.
She literally drank almost mace.
It's subjectively sometimes a bad idea. Anyway, moving on. I'm gonna advance us. Okay. So what do you need? And that's getting us into like what everything on our table is. So if you're going to be doing infusions, you need something to put the alcohol and flavor in. Bobby, you want to talk about this?
So here we have a standard tea infuser. I got this from Capital Teas, but I think you can find them online. What I love about it is you can just untwist, put your tea or dry herbs in here, put it back, fill up your alcohol into there.
Or tea.
Or water.
Yeah.
And then you just screw it and then flip it, and then it will steep or infuse on its own.
We have a French press, which is another great option. So this right here allows you guys to steep whatever or infuse whatever alcohol or tea you're making, and then press it down so that way you don't continue to either infuse it or what's the word I'm looking for? Steep or strain. It makes you strain it. But also it doesn't have to be fancy. You can infuse things in a water bottle. You can
tea balls as well that you can use. You can just use as much as a filter itself.
Well,
and a pour over. You could do a pour over.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of mason jars. I grew up in the South. I'm a big fan of these. Most of the drinks you'll see us pouring things out of tonight are from mason jars. But if I was to serve for somebody, so you can see this one has floaty things in it. You might be able to see. I don't know if you can see. There's things floating in here because there's peppercorn still in this.
There's floaters in it.
And so if you wanted to serve that to somebody and you didn't want to serve them pieces of pepper, you could use something like this as a strainer. You don't have to have like a fancy strainer. You don't have to have anything. Don't have to go out and spend a lot of money to make this work. You can do this. And because I drink tea on a regular, most of my tea balls I actually use for tea. So something like this that I can still wake up in the morning and drink coffee with is really important for me. But again, this was like $4. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to access these things. We have cocktail shakers, we have other things, but we've also got alternatives.
Yeah. The stuff that we have here, we have been building over years. So we started with just mason jars and filters.
And a dream.
And but now we've slowly evolved each year and have, honed our craft.
Craft.
Sounds so sexy.
Sounds so pretentious.
Wow.
We promise we're not pretentious. The other thing that I will say that you do, or I highly recommend, is a jigger. So this is a 1 1/4 on top and a 3/4 on the bottom. So that way, when you're making something and you're following a recipe, you can very quickly measure things out. But if you don't have a jigger, most kitchens have some form of wet dry measuring cup that often has ounces on it. So we can follow this instead. So again, we wanted to put up there what things are that we like, but also alternatives that if you guys are following along at home, you can easily access.
I'll say measuring is important not only for flavor, but also just to ensure that you can enjoy drinks throughout the night and you're not pouring yourself an entire glass of grain alcohol, let's say.
Yeah, we've never done that. I do also just want to move on though, because I want to talk about how do you infuse things. So one thing you can do, there is no right or wrong way to do things, but there are some general things to follow. The first thing is don't be scared. Like just find flavor profiles you think will go well together, and put them together. There's no bad flavors as long as you like them. I will also say the worst thing that could possibly happen is that you make something that's undrinkable. I mean, it's not the end of the world.
We've done it before. And, after about a few, like 1 or 2 drinks, you can probably drink the undrinkable.
Yeah. Or convince yourself it's drinkable. Yeah. Maybe. So yeah, the worst thing that can happen is you make yourself drinkable mace. It's never really a good idea, but happens. Find flavors that you think will go together, and try it. The next thing I'll say is test. A lot of things that you think might infuse very slowly, infuse very quickly, and things you think might infuse very quickly, infuse very slowly. So if you test, try things out over time, and you put the dry ingredient in, so like this is star anise, you add the star anise, and then you add your alcohol. Try it 5 minutes later, try it 10 minutes later, try it 15 minutes later, and keep trying it until you feel like it tastes right. And I'll start a live infusion in a little bit.
I'd also say that when we started, we kind of just went balls to the wall and just made up the most ridiculous infusions with 10 different things, and pretty much we were making infused cocktails in one vodka jar, so it's less is more in infusions. So start small, start with one thing, start with 2 things, and then layer non-alcoholic things on the alcohol, or layer the juices and sodas on your non-alcoholic mocktails.
Yeah. So we do recommend trying things as you go. We can advance the slide. So infusion recommendations. I have a couple of things that I will talk through, things I do recommend. First thing is dry ingredients infuse quicker. So things like teas, herbs, spices, if they're dried herbs and spices, they infuse much quicker than fresh herbs and spices. And I think that has to do with alcohol to water displacement. If something is dried, it has no alcohol, so it has a lot more space to displace. Cannot say that word. Something, but if it is wet, it doesn't. So there's more transference that has to happen. When I say wet, I mean fruit.
Let's just talk about osmosis here.
No, I'm going to get even more confused.
No, I'm just kidding.
While a dry ingredient you probably don't want to let soak for a really long time, a wet ingredient you can let soak for months. I have some wet ingredients I have sitting in my fridge for like 2 years. And you can still drink them because it's alcohol, so it doesn't really go bad. I'm essentially pickling things, except not pickling because that's vinegar.
Consume your infusions within a few weeks to a few months.
Yeah, don't do what I do. It's not good. But what I'm saying is the flavor transference takes longer with fruit is essentially what I'm trying to get to. You can, if you put a jar of pepper in a thing of vodka and then realize that was too much pepper, you can fix it.
We've never done that. Never. Okay, our first year of infusing, we took an entire bag of peppercorns. We ground them up, mistake, poured them all into a mason jar, which was about that much, and then filled the mason jar up, which is why we keep calling it mace. Everyone else, plus including me, could not drink it, but she said it was delicious and carried it around the entire con, pretending like it was drinkable.
And tried to get other people to drink it. I'm not a bad person.
She was me.
At all.
I'm
a horrible human being.
But everybody loves
it. But so in that case, if you do make that mistake, it's easy to fix things by diluting them. So that would be the first step I would make. If you've made a mistake and you've over infused something, you can fix it by adding more mixer or more of the alcohol. So in the case of this one right here, this is a peppercorn vodka that I forgot about. Peppercorn vodka should be this color. There's a color difference.
Slightly.
So you can tell I've kind of forgotten about this one. So I am going to use this in a cocktail tonight because I want to show you guys that you can fix this, but I am going to dilute it because you need to. It's not good.
You don't want to repeat 2000.
Yeah. And then you can fix burniness by adding anti-burning ingredients. Burniness is a very specific term. Very clinical. Yeah. Don't add Pepto-Bismol to alcohol. I don't know what that would be, but I don't think it would be good. So starriness, I've lifted this up a couple of times and I've mentioned it. Some alcohols, when you add flavors to them, tend to get very harsh. It brings out the tannins. Some ingredients can remove tannins. Star anise is one of those ingredients. Now, star anise has a licorice taste. It's what licorice is made out of. So if you don't like licorice, maybe don't use this.
I do have to say, you can use a very little bit amount to compensate, but it doesn't really inflect that flavor.
Yeah.
But if you have to like overcompensate and then you start tasting and you don't like it, then that can become a problem.
Other alcohols don't have that problem. So vodka tends to be pretty prone to burniness. Tequila, on the other hand, you can do almost anything to without creating a undrinkable thing. But I will also say that tequila is
a dangerous drink, my friend.
Yeah, very. A lot of people have different feelings about tequila. I love tequila.
I'm more of a gin guy, but yeah, I'm doing a dry year, so that's why I'm doing the mocktails. So
okay, and we're gonna. So that's a bit about infusions.
Next slide.
So we want to jump into some cocktails. Now that we've had some chance to run through some things. So this first one is called Do You Trust Me? And
nothing at all.
This cocktail is the first thing that we're going to use that involves bitters. Bitters are something that are typically made using a high proof alcohol. We're also using our hands for a lot of things that you would not use your hands for if you were serving other people. So just an FYI on that. So fire bitters are bitters. This is a vodka-based bitter. Normally you would use a grain alcohol, but I don't have access to grain alcohols because Virginia doesn't sell them. This one is, what's the word I'm looking for? Word. to make a fire bitter for me, what I do is I take cinnamon, black pepper, and all of the spicy peppers I can find. And I let them sit in vodka or grain alcohol for a really long time.
It's her new mace, which is okay because we only use very little.
Yeah, we only use very little, although it is popular and traded amongst people that really like hot sauces.
And
So
we give it to shots to people we really don't like.
yeah, so for this cocktail, I'm going to put just a tiny, tiny amount of this in here.
For the mocktail, we're going to use a little bit of Tabasco. And I got this cute little bottle. I'm not adorable. Praise Jesus.
And the reason why he's using Tabasco instead of a bitter is because a bitter typically does have a little alcohol in it. Although it's almost always diluted to the point in which there is no alcohol. And then I'm going to use 2 cherries.
I think I put too much in. I'm not feeling spicy today.
You'll be fine. 2 cherries. And again, using my fingers. I should not be, but this is for home consumption, so it's fine.
Could you do me the honors?
Sure.
Oh, I shouldn't have put ice in it first.
Nope. I was wondering what you were doing.
I'm stupid.
It's okay.
I'm getting excited. Woo!
Now, because I'm doing this the right way, I'm going to set this glass aside.
Sorry.
And I'm going to use my building clip because I'm building this. Add some ice.
We obviously practiced the drinks prior.
We should have gotten more ice. Okay. Next thing.
Is watching. He can come and get the ice bucket, get some more ice.
We don't have help at all. And now I'm gonna do 2 ounces of hibiscus gin.
And I am going to use 2 ounces of hibiscus tea. And now I'm at hot version.
Yep.
All right.
And I'm going to do 4 ounces of ginger beer. And I'm not going to shake this because I'm using carbonation.
Ounces, I think.
Here, you can use the same.
Okay, I'll just do the rest.
And now we need lemon juice.
I have that right here, my friend.
We're going to be real fancy. Use real lemons, not fake lemons. Not fake lemons.
Just, you think a quarter or a whole?
Yeah.
Might got a little seed in there, but who cares? A little lemon for Jesus, guys.
I don't think Jesus has anything to do with this.
Praise the Lord. All right.
And again, because we're real hygienic, we're going to stir this. I'm going to use a knife.
I'm going to use a stir.
And now you pour it.
I will use my fancy pour. Oh, really?
We also didn't measure these cups. It's fine. Should be pretty close.
Mine is perfect as always.
And if you wanted to be real fancy, you could garnish this with a slice of lemon and cherries.
Or hibiscus is being really fancy. That's refrescante.
So that is a Do You Trust Me? Named.
Okay, after that, I trust you a little bit.
Little bit.
No lie. That Tabasco actually works.
Named mostly because of the the hot sauce. So anytime I ask somebody how spicy do you like something? Typically they're like, why? And they get a little scared. They get a little scared, which is fair. Okay. So the next drink we want to talk about is called the Halfling Mocktail.
Bring me the Halfling!
Before you move on to the next drink, someone
Yeah.
asked, Bobby, what are you cosplaying?
Oh, thank you. That's a good question. What are you cosplaying, Bobby?
That's a Seth MacFarlane sci-fi
God.
series.
You don't remember the name of the series? It begins with an O. I'll help.
Watch it. Forget
Or
We all know it. We all can say it, but we're not going to.
Yeah.
You guys are
Begins with an O.
Because I watch it.
O-R.
The Orville.
There you go.
Sorry. I do not know what happened to my brain.
We like him because he's pretty.
Ooh, I'm gonna drop that. And this is me without alcohol. Just imagine. It's crazy. It gets crazy.
Okay. So the
Can
next can confirm. The next thing we are going to be doing is Halfling Leaf
Halfling!
mocktail, and I'm making a cocktail version of this, but I actually wrote this as a mocktail, and we're going to make this one straight in a glass. For this one, I'm going to take 3 blackberries, put them in my glass.
That would be trace blackberries.
And the reason why we're doing this, why this one's called this, is because of the lapsang tea. Now, if you've never had lapsang tea, it is delicious. It's my favorite form of black tea.
She is a liar.
But it's actually a smoked black tea.
If you like drinking a cigar, lapsang souchong is your thing.
And so I kind of feel like this is very smoky, earthy, kind of like what I think halfling leaf would taste like.
That's adorable.
Right.
This is why I love it.
Because I'm not going to do this in the order of the recipe. I'm going to put a little bit of simple syrup in here so that I've got something to muddle it into. And I'm not measuring, I'm just putting a splash. And in the nature of use what you've got, I've got a Braves bat, go Braves, that I'm going to use as a muddle stick.
I'm just going to use the handle of my jigger, which is a little too small right now. Wow, did not mean it that way.
You want to use the
Crazy!
thing?
No, that's fine.
And when you muddle it, you want to get it nice and squishy. I don't know if you can see, but nice and squishy. You want it like pretty.
My limbs.
Bobby's going to use his
Can you see it now?
link.
You see it? Would you just look at it? Jesus.
And so that gives you an idea of kind of like what we're trying to achieve with the muddle. You've had enough?
That was hygienic.
I'm sure it's fine.
What's next?
Next step, you want to add 3 to 6 ounces of lapsang tea.
We used my beautiful mini French press to make some.
And I'm using a rye because no.
How much?
About 3 fingers worth.
Oh, about, let's see. Okay, this is nothing.
Bobby is struggling.
I'm not struggling.
For people that aren't familiar with
Something's real.
alcohol, could you
Yeah.
explain what 3 fingers means?
Sure. I'm going to make Bobby do this again. And actually, I did closer to 2. 2 fingers held up to the glass so you can't see the alcohol, or it should come up to about 2 fingers.
So when you're trying to feel fancy and you're getting like whiskey, you can say, I'd like 2 fingers.
And the reason I'm measuring it this way is because rather than saying a specific ounceage is because it's a whiskey drink, so the rules are slightly different. Also, it's just the way I like it. So we need orange syrup. Orange, sir. Just give me an orange slice. I know.
Put me to work, you know.
Minion. I am going to give this a quick stir.
I do have the knife. I am just reminded.
Yeah. And
I don't
before
care if this came out.
I actually use my knife, I'm going to flip this in here. Just kind of stick it in there. And I've already muddled.
My orange has gone in.
And now I'm going to add some ice. And thank you for that question, Ashley. I completely forgot that 2 fingers, 3 fingers is not a common measurement. Ice.
Thank you. Don't mind if I do.
And this is kind of like a very bizarre old-fashioned.
Yes. Let me try my non-alcoholic. Nice.
Yeah? You like it?
It's very cocktaily without being a cocktail.
Yeah.
Very mocktaily.
Good. It's supposed to be. All right. And our last cocktail that we're going to do
Let's move one more.
is the spicy bees. This one is kind of something that I did inspired by Jess Lavore from Critical Role, because Hello Bees. And this one is one that I'm actually going to do in a shaker. Bobby is not, though, because he is using carbonated soda, which you do not want to shake. So, did I just break this? I did just break this. It's fine. I'm gonna use my water bottle if I need to.
You can see we're adding ice to the martini glass just to cool it down a little bit.
And it just looks fancy. I think it's cool. There's a reason why people do this. And we're also adding ice to our shakers. Well, I'm adding ice to my shaker. What are you looking for? Do you want to use the Pyrex?
Nope.
Are you just shaking?
I'm just shaking.
Okay.
Probably stop before I make somebody seasick.
And this is the one where I'm going to be using the questionable vodka and the unquestionable vodka. And this recipe calls for 2 ounces of vodka. So I am going to do, if I can open this, I'm needing help.
So manly.
You are so manly. And again, showing how fancy and pretentious we are, this is Costco vodka.
Paying that mind to how it is half full. I'm an optimist.
Yeah. So very carefully, because this thing is giant. Worrying about an ounce. There.
And I'll talk to you about my soda. I have a soda stream, so I'm able to make my own infused sodas as well. That kind of elevates, but mixes up the mocktails as well. I don't know why I got that funny song that day.
You've been speaking with one off and on all day.
Oh, rude. So what I did to get the peppercorn is I boiled a little water with some peppercorn and some ground up pepper. I made my soda stream, and then I strained that tea into my soda.
And one thing I'll say is when you're making an infusion like peppercorn, where it is going to be a little intense, the flavors are a little intense. You wouldn't drink straight pepper soda. You do want to what are you doing?
I'm just getting a simple service.
The honey is right here.
I think.
It's just not labeled.
All right.
Because I don't label anything. In that case, you do want to, what was I saying? You want to go very delicate with the flavors, because pepper is so intense. It can overpower a drink very easily. I need this. I know, I'm horrible. Do you want this?
Yes.
Do you want
I'm
this?
just gonna do some of the syrup and then mostly soda.
Okay. Let me give this a good shake. Don't shake things that'll explode. It's important.
Oh, that's no fun.
You might be wondering what this coloring is. I did want to add kind of some Jester Lavore flavor to this. So I used some blue color dye that got a little funky, but it should, can I get another lemon wedge? Get a little color changey when I add some lemon juice, if this works.
My turn, pink.
Mine does not seem to want to work.
More juice. There it goes.
There it goes. So, you know, a little bit of magic.
All right. Let's see how this goes.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Um,
Oh, that's really good.
you seem surprised.
I'm always surprised. I never really trust you completely. I came up with basic bitch recipes like, let's do a virgin margarita. Let's do a virgin Moscow mule. And she's like, let's do this.
Let's do something completely ridiculous. Okay. So, if you could go ahead and advance us. Okay. I did want to spend a minute and talk about a little bit about apple pie. If you've ever been to a convention like Dragon Con, somebody has handed you a bottle or a mason jar full of something that they call pie.
And that's always the beginning of the end, my friend.
I personally don't have a solid recipe that is my own for pie. Every recipe I've shared with you guys tonight has been a recipe that I've created or changed somehow. It's an original recipe. I didn't want to share somebody else's recipe with you guys. I don't have a recipe for pie. But also...
Well, I'm also being dry for a year. And so usually when you're doing a grain alcohol drink, it's not really to just have a few drinks. It's not really to drink responsibly. So it's more for a prolonged party. And so what we kind of want to get across is that you can make pie, but you can do it in a way where it's not something that's gonna affect you the next day. Let's just say we can make a pie martini. We can have spice cider or mulled cider with some whiskey, or the mocktail. You could just have the mulled cider.
Yeah, a cinnamon whiskey, like 2 ounces of cinnamon whiskey, 4 ounces of apple cider, with a cinnamon simple syrup would probably be a really good pie-like cocktail. But I didn't want to share a recipe essentially for a moonshine type pie, or grain alcohol type pie. I will also say that there are a ton of great pie makers out there. Santa with the tattoos. He's at Dragon Con every year, and I think that is actually his name on Facebook. It's like Tattooed Santa. Makes an amazing pie. Reach out to him if you have questions. He would be a great resource. I'm not. So I did just want to I was anticipating getting some questions because it is a common con beverage. And I just wanted to, full disclosure, tell you guys that. And I am happy to try to answer your questions about it.
All right, next slide.
And I just wanted to end with a couple of final thoughts.
But I can start. So
yeah.
Safety first. The first thing, we want you to have a safe, fun time. You know, oftentimes you go to these cons and it's like, oh, let's party, party, party. But there's a way to party that's without having to affect your con experience the next day.
I should be back, I think. Yeah. So don't drink and drive. That's the other element of that. Just be mindful about what you're drinking and how much you're drinking, and don't do anything illegal. Which gets into don't drink if you're over 21 or under 21. Don't serve alcohol to people that are under 21. You talked about don't overdrink.
No, not really. So yeah, don't overdrink. We all have and I think this is why it's great to have cocktails and mocktails, because you can have your alcohol and then continue to kind of pace yourself with cocktails that have flavors and their herbaceousness or the spiciness that you like in your own alcoholic cocktails, but won't continue to build upon that alcohol. So you can maintain that healthy buzz, if you want to say buzz, but not get to a point where you won't remember the evening, or you'll miss your panel the next day. We've all had that where we woke it up and you're like, oh, it's 10 o'clock.
Will you go get the gummies for me?
I'll be back.
And the last thing I want to talk about are edible alcohol. So we have gummies and fruit, and there's ways to make both of those so that you can carry it around with you and have fun, but also be safe. And I'll talk a bit about how to make both. And Bobby went to go grab one of each. Oh no, it's fine. This is good. So these are edible gummy bears. I made these for KatsuCon and then forgot to bring them to KatsuCon. Will you hold that up so that people can see?
All right.
They look kind of gross in that jar, but they're not.
They look delicious.
This is an yerba mate tequila and Red Bull infused gummy. I call this a never.
We say about accessories, you take one or two off before you leave the house. Sometimes you do that with your infusion.
I like this one. It's great for Dragon Con. And the way you make these is you have to make everything be very cold. So gummy bears go in the freezer for 24 hours. Alcohol goes in the freezer for 24 hours. You take all components out, mix them together. I typically put about a full jar of gummies, about a quarter of a jar of alcohol. Actually, it's more like half a jar of gummies because they grow. Half a jar of gummies. Just cover the gummies with alcohol. And what happens is the gummies expand and absorb the alcohol, so they need room in your jar to grow. And then everything has to be kept cold. If you, for whatever reason, take them out of the cold, they will melt. And sometimes you can refreeze them by freezing them, but they do need to be kept cold. So I did want to talk about the process for making these.
Yes, because I have failed.
Yeah, if you use warm ingredients, even if one of your ingredients is very cold, it will melt. So these are really fun. I'll also say that you can make fruit, alcoholic fruit. I like to do that too. Essentially what that is you make, one way that we do this is we take blueberries and we soak the blueberries in an alcohol, and then you take out the blueberries that taste like alcohol and throw them away, and then you soak more blueberries in the alcohol, and then you take those blueberries out and throw them away, and you end up with alcohol that tastes just like blueberries. Then you put a final batch of blueberries in, and you end up with alcoholic blueberries that taste like blueberries.
A note on edible alcohol. It will slowly release in your system. So you have to be careful with what you're imbibing and what you're eating, because it can hit you all at once. So again, we're all about safety and control. So be careful when you are actually eating your alcohol.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to talk about is kind of like the stigma of non-drinkers.
Yes.
Oftentimes, I've done dry January, sober October. I've done a few years where I go off just because I feel like sometimes it's just so many cons. It's time to take a break. But oftentimes I'll be at bars or drinking with friends or even strangers, and well, I won't be drinking because I'll be dry. They'll be drinking, and then they'll all of a sudden want to buy me a drink or ask me about drink, and I'll just be like, oh, I'm not drinking right now, and then it becomes a thing where they're trying to find out why I'm not drinking. And then they feel like a little like upset that I'm not drinking with them, as if it's some sort of judgment about their drinking. And it's nothing. And I think we just need to, like, as a community, just have fun together drinking alcohol and regular drinks. So my preachy soapbox is just, let's just have fun together.
Yeah. We did want to open it up for you guys for questions. And while we're asking questions, we're going to be enjoying some of these drinks we made, but also I'm going to be making an infusion. So any questions? Also, if you guys are drinking at home, what are you drinking?
Okay, so we're going to open it up in the Zoom, in the con lobby. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. All right, we have a question from Connie, dressed as Molotov cocktease from Venture Brothers.
I love that.
Yes.
Hello. I am
I don't think I can hear
drinking
her.
I think
these
she's muted.
spiked agua frescas.
I'll repeat the question for you.
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
Oh, right. Yes.
She's drinking agua fresca.
Awesome.
Yes.
What's it from?
I'm curious. A lot of we're kind of talking about this in the chat. A lot of cons have sort of a drinking tradition. Dragon Con has pie. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts around sort of these traditions now that, you know, we've had this whole coronavirus crisis?
So Connie's question is, there are a lot of cons that have like a drinking tradition, like Dragon Con has pie. What are your thoughts about the drinking, what was the word?
Drinking tradition.
Tradition.
And how it's going to be impacted by COVID.
Thank you.
That's a really great question. And Bobby and I were talking about this earlier tonight. We are regular Dragon Con attendees. We both love Dragon Con.
I've gone sober and I've gone unsober.
Yeah. One thing we were thinking about that's probably going to be different is one of my least favorite memories of Dragon Con is, you know how at for anyone that does not go or has never been to Dragon Con, there's escalators everywhere. And the up escalators are right next to the down escalators. And I remember a Dragon Con after dark one night, and literally there was a bottle of alcohol, just straight, like a bottle like this, that was getting passed from people going down the up escalator and back down the down escalator and back and forth and back and forth. And they were like, here, drink from the bottle and pass it on to somebody else. And I expect to see, I don't expect to see less of that, but I do expect to see that different. I expect to see more people drinking out of cups. I expect to see more cups floating around. And I expect to see sharing via cup more often than not moving forward. Now, part of the reason why I think some of that will still happen, and I definitely think it will, is because people are
once you get to a certain level of inebriation, you know, you're not going to really care that much.
Well, and also there's a belief that alcohol kills germs.
Technically true, but not like that. But I'm going to say I think that this is a generationally defining moment. It's going to change the way we interact with each other. It's going to change the way we con, I think. I was talking to Sarah earlier and talking about what like recommendations we would have, and I was saying carrying around your own cup in your like a little side hip flask or something that a collapsible cup. Pull it out, let them pour it in, and share if you are comfortable sharing after this, because I think a lot of people won't be comfortable. And then sober cons versus, cons that I have attended sober versus cons that I have attended while I drink. I've had fun, both sober and slightly inebriated. And I don't really think it has affected my enjoyment of a con. So I've been able to have fun without alcohol at a con because I'm there for my friends. I'm there for the experiences. It's great because I get to watch my friends be idiots instead of be the idiot myself. So there's that positive. But I also I think I had some of my worst cons when I drank too much. Like, there were a few cons, like Dragon Cons, where I said, do I really want to come back here next year? Like, I'm not even enjoying myself. And I realized I was overindulging in the alcohol, and it was affecting me. It was causing some depression. It was bringing up some emotional issues that I hadn't dealt with. And so I think that whether you have the alcohol or you don't, you can have fun and you can enjoy yourself, and you can find like-minded people at any con.
And I do want to note, people have many reasons why they don't drink. I have a friend who is a recovering alcoholic. And, if you push somebody to drink when they say they don't want to drink, that's not cool. You can still have fun and not drink. And you don't have to bug somebody and keep asking them, oh, why won't you have a drink? Why won't you have a drink? Especially if somebody's an alcoholic, that's a bad situation for them to be in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you definitely don't know anybody's background. So that's why I kind of say don't push if somebody doesn't want to drink. It could be medication, it could be medical, it could be emotional, it could be a whole range of things that you do not want to know the answer to, my friend. So leave it be. If someone says no, no means no. And I think this day and age, no is now becoming an okay answer. Thank God, because it gets annoying when people keep pushing. That was the muddler.
Oh, we did have a couple comments about Bloody Marys. How do you make your Bloody Marys interesting?
I have a couple of Bloody Mary recipes that I love. My favorite, I'm a big fan of Zing Zang Bloody Mary mix. If you've never tried it, it's my favorite. I like peppercorn vodka in my Bloody Mary, or if I'm feeling very adventurous and out of the box, jalapeno tequila is another go-to for Bloody Marys for me.
Bacon vodka is a good second.
I don't like bacon vodka as much.
Well, that's
you
because
do.
You're wrong.
Yeah. I think bacon vodka is too salty. And for me, the more you put into a Bloody Mary, the better. It's like the only drink where I think that is the rule. Like, just go for it. You put that Worcestershire sauce in there. You put your horseradish in there. Put your hot sauce in there. Just like go for it.
Yeah.
I will say that jalapeno tequila is my favorite summer cocktail alcohol. And it's the easiest thing in the world to make. You want to take a single jalapeno, cut it into typically quarters, take 90% of the seeds out, and you want to fill up a mason jar about this big with it. And
Depends
this is
how spicy you want it.
Yeah, this is an 800. One thing I did one summer that was a lot of fun. We did a family beach trip. And I cut up watermelon, made a jalapeno tequila, soaked the watermelon in the jalapeno tequila overnight. So the watermelon absorbed all of the jalapeno tequila, but it still had like that watermelon flavor.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had on the beach, where it was completely illegal to drink. They were like coming around being like, no open containers. And you were like, oh, well, this isn't an open container. I'm just having a snack of watermelon. And
that's where edible alcohol can come in handy.
Yeah, it was amazing. And it's a solid thing. And then later on that night when we wanted to make margaritas, we just took the watermelon we had left from the cooler, threw it in the blender.
Margarita.
And made margaritas. So I highly recommend if you've never done this. And I do this with a silver or a clear tequila, not a dark tequila. Yeah, but yeah, so another one of my absolute favorite things.
For Bloody Marys, I like to make my own mix, but my favorite things to put in are Valentina hot sauce and Worcestershire, obviously, and a touch of horseradish, and then whatever alcohol. But right now, no alcohol.
I will also say that despite the fact that I am the creator of fire bitters and drinkable mace,
that is debatable.
I have a low heat tolerance. So I don't have a favorite hot sauce.
She's so stubborn to say it's delicious, she'll drink it.
If I have a low heat tolerance when it comes to things like Bloody Mary, so I don't have a favorite hot sauce, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have a few.
Anybody in the audience have any favorite Bloody Mary recipes they want to share?
I don't see any hands being raised, but we do have somebody watching who's in Ireland right now and said that the fruit is very enticing. Can you talk more about the fruit infusions?
Sure. So I don't actually have any up here. Run and grab me one. Go for it. Go fetch. So I was starting an herbal one, but I can do something different. So a fruit infusion is typically something where, so I've got these kiwis that I bought at the store and they're starting to go bad. So we're going to use them. They may have a little bit of edible glitter because this tea has edible glitter. So fruit infusions are things that I really like, but they do take a while to make. And we're going to do a kiwi vodka. Kiwis. So one trick with fruit is if it's got a peel, like an orange has a peel, the peel on it can get it to go very bitter very quickly. So you need to know a bit about the kind of fruit you're using and a bit about the kind. You brought beets.
Are this beets?
Those are beets.
Brought cherries.
Okay. A bit about the kind of fruits you're using, and I would just definitely play around with it.
They're cherries.
I will say it takes a while to make, and these are coming from our freezer. So I'll talk a little bit more about what each of those things are as I'm peeling this kiwi horribly.
Muscadines.
If you've never heard of a muscadine, I'm sorry. You are clearly from the north, not from Georgia. A muscadine is a type of grape that is native to the United States. It is like a very sweet grape. So these are muscadines. And the other thing I'll say is if it's got an unedible seed, you want to remove the seed. So these cherries are cherries that were soaked in bourbon. And we soak these in bourbon for, I want to say 6 months. And it's a little frozen.
We'll flush
it. Sure. But, well, okay. I don't know what you were trying to get me to do. Here, take this.
Nothing.
You can, just gonna pour a little bit of this out so they can see what it looks like because it's a little hard in this jar. So you can eat the cherries straight, or you can use the liquor in a drink. And it is very cherry. You essentially make a cherry flavored bourbon, where it is straight bourbon with some cherry in it.
I noticed someone said that their alcohol does not freeze when they freeze it. But when you mix and infuse alcohol with fruit, you put sugar and more liquid into it. So it dilutes the alcohol a little bit. So that's why we're getting a little bit of ice crystal. It's not completely frozen because it's still moving around, but the water that has diluted some of the alcohol from the fruit is freezing.
The other thing I'll say is you get the flavors of the alcohol of the fruit you're putting in there. So you want to use riper, sweeter fruits. I thought about doing a raspberry infusion because raspberries are in super mega sale right now. But I ultimately decided against it because the raspberries just are so bitter right now that I was worried I would end up with something very bitter, almost bitter to the point in which it was undrinkable. So essentially what I'm doing here is, and again, there's no hard and fast rules on these. This is just what we've played around with and tried and found that it works. And I've literally never infused kiwis before, but I bought 4 pounds of kiwis 2 weeks ago and they're starting to go bad. So I figure, why not? And anyone that's ever had kiwis knows that they get super sweet right before they go bad. So hopefully this will yield something very sweet.
Do we have any other questions? I know we're coming up on time, so I don't know what the Grandmaster wants us to do.
Someone said that it looks like you were at a hotel.
That's just because we're at Bobby's house, and Bobby lives in a hotel.
I can neither confirm nor deny where I live. I'll just say thank you.
We did try to make this feel as much like you were drinking in a con suite as possible. That was kind of our aim with our setup.
And this is kind of like our setup at the con.
Yeah, this is essentially...
It looks like a cooking show.
Yeah, without the fancy glasses, because we don't bring those to Dragon Con, this is our Dragon Con setup. Typically, we have a shrine of dragons.
Are there any more questions from the audience?
Let me just, before we drop out, I'm going to finish this kiwi one because I wanted to kind of show how this works.
Absolutely. You still have a couple minutes.
Sure. So the last thing I'm going to do, just top it up to cover the kiwi. Oops. Still everywhere.
As I do a little bit more than I'm supposed to.
So essentially what I do when I'm making an alcohol fruit infusion is I'm going to let this sit like this, and I'll try it in a couple of days. I'll let you hold that up closer to the camera. And so it's kiwi, and it's already starting to change color. And that's because of how much water is in the kiwis right now. And so the kiwis will, the vodka will leach out all of the essentially kiwi flavored kiwiness from the water. Fruit gets a lot of its flavor from the water in the fruit.
The fruit will not taste good.
The fruit will not taste good when it comes out of this. So what I'm doing is I'm effectively taking all of the flavoredness of the fruit out and replacing it with alcohol. Then I'll take the fruit out that now tastes exactly like vodka because the fruit is displaced all of its fruit flavor into the vodka.
It's like what's that called? It's like the LaCroix of fruit.
Yeah.
Like, it still has the essence, the memory of its flavor, but it's not really that good.
It is very fibery.
We do have one more question.
Sure. Go for it.
So, what are your tips for transporting or drinking at con? Like, do you bring this whole setup with you at a convention, or what are your tips?
What are your tips for transporting and drinking at con?
Yeah.
Like,
that
what is your
a
setup?
Really great question. We will often walk around with a bottle like this.
It also comes with a little sleeve that makes it a little less
breakable. We will often walk around with a jar like this. And you can buy for mason jars, especially the ones that are narrow lidded. Don't buy the wide lidded ones. So just so you can see the difference. The narrow lidded ones, you can buy like straw lids for them, and you can pour out of it a lot easier. The other thing I'll say is there's a bunch of great vendors out there that make cooler backpacks.
Right. There's like backpacks that are lined to keep it cool, like a lunch bag type thing.
Yeah. And so if you get an insulated backpack, one of your friends, a friend can walk around with an ice pack. My ice pack right now is frozen beets because I ran out of ice pack, because I ran out of freezer space, because too many people are panic buying, including myself. So you can put like a ice pack in there to keep everything cool, and then put a couple of different things of alcohol in that. I will say one advantage to these bottles is they're very light. You can also use a thermos like this one. Again, looks like a thermos.
Another thing are camelbacks, but you have to check if you can put alcohol in them, and I believe they're BPA free and they're okay, but don't quote me on that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't let it sit. I have had experiences with friends who've done 2 Camelback bladders in a backpack, and they had alcohol in one and water in the other. And then they just give you the straws and be like, whichever.
And then you don't remember.
Your question?
That's good.
Yeah.
I think we are coming up to the actual time we have to call time. I literally pushed it as long as we could.
No worries.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, guys. We had a lot of fun with y'all.
Enjoy the rest of your ConFromHome. Stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy.